Welcome, Personal Health and Wellness, to our module on nutrition. This is somewhat of an intro video to kind of get you primed up for what is coming in our nutrition module here. And I'm sure you've already looked down and you saw that there were some multiple folders. And that is kind of my way of structuring out this talk so that it has more value. Now, first, I am not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. I was not trained in higher education about nutrition, except for I took 2 or 3 classes in it. Now, with that being said, I want you to understand I don't have formal training in nutrition, but what I do bring to the table is very much experiential. And by that I mean I have self-experimented nutrition from every angle, and I'm very passionate about it because it runs parallel with physical activity in health, performance, and longevity. Those are my primary professional passions. And so I cannot leave out nutrition. So I hope that you understand that while I was not formally trained, again, I'm a physical therapist assistant, I'm an athletic trainer, I'm an exercise science buff, I just love that kind of stuff, but I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian. So please keep that in mind as we go through this. I don't have the answers to everything, but I certainly am passionate about finding answers to it if I don't know. So with that being said, let's begin. What is nutrition? That's simply the study of food and the nutrients in the food. And this is a very important part to begin with. First of all, food, real food, not stuff that you find in a package that's food-like, but real food has nutrients. And nutrients are important because that's what makes our bodies function well. So we go from there and we say, okay, what are nutrients? Well, nutrients are broken up into 2 forms. Number one, there's macronutrients. These are our proteins, our fats, and our carbohydrates. And they're larger in nature. Number 2 is micronutrients. That's our vitamins, our minerals, and our water. And we'll get into each of these as we progress through our modular talk. There's also a very unique subdivision of this, and that is there's essential nutrients, and those are things that our body has to have. It's essential, and we have to get them through our food. Then there's this thing called non-essential, which to me says they're either non-essential for our body to have, or maybe our body can produce them, and it doesn't have to be introduced through the food that we eat. And so I want you to kind of walk through everything with that mentality. Macro, micronutrients, and then essential, non-essential nutrients. One of the unique things here is this next word, and that is diet. We very commonly just kind of confer that diet means we're restricting some type of food intake. And that's not the context that I will consistently use in our talk. Many times when I say the word diet, I'm just referring to a study of what it is or an observation of what we consume daily. And that may be food, that may be drink, because many of the beverages that we consume daily have quite a large calorie density to it, but not often does it have a nutritional density to it. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But a great place to kind of get started after we've kind of reviewed some of this is to go to choosemyplate.gov. Choosemyplate.gov is a great little resource to begin in your own study for nutrition. It's basically going to tell you specific daily recommendations based off of your age, based off your gender, based off your activity level, based off your body type. And it's going to do that off of relative norms, research. Now, I want to say this. I'm not trying to sound too contrarian here, but it's not 100% agreed upon by me or many people. There are a lot of good things in this website, and I'm going to make you go to it, and I'm going to make you reference some things as a part of an assignment, but it is not, in my mind, a perfect picture of what we should be doing nutritionally. I disagree with several things about it. That being said, It's a great starting point. If you have no other point of reference, if McDonald's is your only point of reference for food or the chip aisle at the grocery store, then this is going to improve dramatically your nutritional habits, right? So keep that in mind. But maybe at some point you may need to grow and mature out of this because you've self-experimented, which is what I've done, enough to know what does work and what doesn't work. So what is food? Well, you kind of think you know what food is, but let's look at it very specifically and objectively. Food is a substance that we consume to maintain life. Now, with that being said, food has to have some type of value to it. It has calories, and calories across the board are demonized. Oh, don't, it's got too many calories. Well, listen, you have to have calories. Calories are not only an important part of food, but also they're important to us to maintain our bodily functions. We need calories to do everything that our body does, but specifically for energy. In fact, that's what a calorie is it's a measure of energy. And then when we look at it as a measure of energy, what we can understand is that some foods have more energy to them, and some foods have less energy to them. Some foods have more nutrients in them, and some foods have less nutrients. And what's really kind of the crux of all this is to find a high nutrient density with a relatively low calorie density, or at least, one that has value versus these foods predominantly in packages, predominantly in boxes, predominantly on the chip and cereal aisles that have very low nutrients and very high calories. So we think about that. By the way, those foods are also found in just about every fast food place that you find along the street of your local town or neighborhood. So with that being said, let's get back into these macronutrients here. So we talked about this just a minute ago. These are our proteins, our fats, and our carbohydrates. And what we know is that science has dictated to us that fats have about 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates and proteins both have about 4 calories per gram. And we can use this to help us understand how many calories we're consuming. In fact, one of your assignments is to identify your caloric intake for a week. That's tough to do because you're taking every food and you're breaking down how many calories there are. What's much easier, and you'll see in a video coming up, is how to break down your macros or your macronutrients and track those instead. Because what happens is you get the same math, you just have to use a very easier number. Let you watch that video and see what you think. One of the other aspects, though, here with macros is every human's diet. And I'm not saying diet as in we're restricting, I'm saying diet as in an observation of what we eat, breaks down macros into 3 realms of the pie chart. You're going to get a bulk of one of these macros over another, and then even over another. One is going to kind of typically bias the greatest amount. One's going to be kind of in the middle. One's going to be very little. In the standard Americanized diet, our culture, but also our government, has said that your largest macro intake should be from carbohydrates. Then you should probably get some proteins and very little fats. Now, there's been some growth and there's been some understanding that we've demonized fats way too much. And that's kind of starting to move. But there is another generation of diet coming up there that says we're going to flip that on its head and we're going to look at it from a different standpoint. And I'm going to show you the evidence, and you're going to get to make the decision on your own. But what we know is that every one of us basically divides that macro up into the pie chart. It's just how do you do it? Micronutrients are a little different. These are our vitamins and these are our waters. I'm sorry, our vitamins, our minerals, and our waters. Now, if you look here, vitamins are used for energy, they're used for immunity, they're used for blood clotting, and they're used for bodily functions. They're broken down into water and fat soluble. So I want to take just a minute and say this. all through your childhood, your mother said, take your vitamin, make sure you eat lots of food with vitamins. Vitamins just came out as kind of the Cinderella of food. Like everybody thought they're good. They have to be good because that's just what mom told us. And we were all under the, um, and very accurately so, but vitamins were just good. Now, if you kind of go back in just a few recent years, what you find is that that was quite the opposite. It was the maleficent, right? And it was the bad guy. And we stayed away from fats. Fats were really bad. But interesting is how vitamins break down into water, which we also know is good, but fat soluble, meaning they have to have fats just so they can be absorbed into the body. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, they all need fats. And so those are important to getting these vitamins processed through the body. The uptake doesn't happen without it. And so immediately what I'm proving is that fats are important. They're not the bad guy. Number two here though is minerals. They're used for growth, they're used for bone health, they're used for fluid balance. We're going to address those very specifically. But one of the minerals that I like to talk about the most is salt. Salt is also very demonized, but it's a very critical component to not just having as a mineral in our body, but there's also these trace minerals that come in, which are very small, and they have to be incorporated into our body as well. Our body needs them. And a perfect example of that is iodine. And the way we now introduce iodine into our body using salt that's been iodized. And so we have these macro minerals like salt, we have these trace minerals like iodine, and we have large, unique populations, especially in the river valley, which we're in, but also high up in the mountainous areas, who don't get a lot of iodine just because their soil doesn't have it. And so they need that even more. Again, things that we have often heard are bad for us are often misunderstood. And I want you to think about that as we go forward, that you're not just taking what you've heard and applying that forward into your nutritional pursuits, that you're doing the studies on your own and you're understanding what things are out there and what you definitely need. I want to leave you with, in this video, a short little talk on water. Number one, water has no calories. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have a value, though, to it. And it just simply means that it doesn't have calories. It's a very important part, though, of our body, because our body is made up to 50 to 70% of water. Another thing here is you can only go 10 days without it before you're dead. And immediately that starts getting people's attention, because some of you are out there watching this and you're like, I have not had a glass of water in 10 days. Does that mean I'm going to die? No, it doesn't mean that, because you absorb water through foods. You take in water through that poisonous stuff called Coca-Cola and Pepsi. You take in some water through the even more poisonous stuff called alcohol. But very little, and then what it does is very detrimental. But what we know is that you can absorb some water from more non-essential things. It's not the best way to do it, but you know what? There are some people out there who just will not fill up a glass of water and drink it. I don't understand why, especially not in 2019, but that's just the way it is. Food, urine, sweat, feces, metabolism, all things that we kind of have given importance to in our body, they need water. Another thing is, if you exercise or you drink water, it influences how much water intake you have in your body. One of the things that we talked about in body composition was body weight. And if you drink a bunch of water before you weigh, you've changed your body weight. But it won't take long, and that body weight will shift again, because fluid dynamics in our body are so rapidly changing throughout the course of the day that we can't possibly keep up with it. So water is absolutely one of the most unique things here. And I hope that when you watch the video, the supplemental video about water, it really kind of hits home and gives you some thoughts on maybe how much water you are drinking. So from here, we'll pause. We'll go into the fats file next. And from there, I hope that you walk away with a brand new appreciation for what fat is. I'll see you there.